I want to thank everyone for coming. This press conference in some ways overlaps another important meeting that some of us have, and so some of us won't be able to stick around for the depth of this press conference that others will, so you'll understand why some of us are leaving. But obviously the issue of immigration has received a lot of attention over the campaign, and is certainly a lot of attention inside of our cities. There's a lot of concern inside of our nation's cities about what next steps the president and the next administration will be taking. We have worked for quite some time on this issue. We have a committee that works on immigration. The co-chairs of that committee, I believe, are Mayor Orlarza and Mayor Tate. And Mayor Murray and Mayor Garcetti have also been greatly involved. They have been working on the language for this conference so that this entire conference could come together and endorse in a consensus and a bipartisan way this conference's stance on this issue. And I'm pleased to report just a few minutes ago in our executive session, we did approve this document. So I want to thank the mayors involved, and with that, I'll introduce the mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti. Oh, man, that was going so well, too. I just saw him in the hallway. All right, well, I'm guessing he'll be here shortly. He is going to be here shortly. Yeah. Well, while we're waiting, why don't we just let the other mayors introduce themselves? We'll just start over here and come this way.
Mayor Jim Kenney for Philadelphia.
Mayor Shane Bemis, Gresham, Oregon.
Mayor Joy Cooper, City of Hallandale Beach, Florida.
Mayor Ed Pulowski, Allentown, Pennsylvania.
Mayor Marilyn Strickland, Tacoma, Washington.
Mitch Landry, City of New Orleans.
Mick Cornett, Oklahoma City.
Jorge Lorza, Providence, Rhode Island.
Tom Tate, Anaheim, California.
Paul Soglin, Madison, Wisconsin.
Mike Rawlings, Dallas, Texas.
Ed Murray, Seattle, Washington.
Elizabeth Cox, Burnsville, Minnesota.
We've had three mayors who just walked in. If they would introduce themselves, make it forward with Mayor Stanton. If you all would just introduce yourselves.
Bonnie Walsh, Boston, Massachusetts.
Ed Lee, San Francisco. Joe Gannon, Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Greg Stanton, Phoenix. Michael Hancock, Denver.
And here he is. Oh, here he is. Okay.
Mayor Garcetti, I've given a little bit of background on the committee's work and the fact that the executive committee has just endorsed this as policy of this organization. With that, here's the mayor of Los Angeles.
Thank you so much. Well, thank you and good afternoon, everybody. And I'm so proud to be part of this group of mayors who are one of the last vestiges perhaps of bipartisan work, who wake up every day looking at the problems of the people that we represent and look for solutions. And today, America's mayors stood behind our resolution, our emergency resolution on immigration. Heartland cities and communities, coastal cities, northern, southern, eastern, and western places that stood up to reaffirm our values and to reaffirm the importance to our economy and the safety of our streets of the role that immigrants play in our community. The belief that immigrants are part of the American story, and the heart of it in many ways, so many of us can trace our ancestry back to other places. Some came willingly, some came unwillingly. Some were here for thousands of years before the rest of us arrived. But in knowing that, we see that the strength of our cities in America rests on making sure that we have pathways towards full participation and inclusion of all Americans. This bipartisan resolution passed with bipartisan support. And we're encouraged that on Capitol Hill, a bipartisan coalition has come together too, to make sure that those folks like dreamers who came here, just as my grandfather did 2 generations ago, those military families who today have their sons and daughters wearing our uniform, and the actions that we can take to ensure that they stay on a steady pathway towards inclusion is what today is all about. This program that President Obama was able to work on that created pathways to legal status has allowed some 740,000 people to prosper, removing the fear of deportation. And in my city, average wages went up 40% for those dreamers who had temporary status granted. That helped all of us who are native-born too. Study after study shows that when we push people back into the shadows, they work for less than the minimum wage. They compete unfairly with American workers and drive everyone's wages down. Conversely, legal status means a more prosperous economy, not just for them, but for all of us. Yes, they got a 40% raise, but studies showed a 1 or 2% raise in all of our wages when those folks can move forward. So this resolution says to the American people that regardless of party or of ideology, America's mayors are united in the belief that we must and can fix our broken immigration system that works today for too few people, for our communities, for our native-born, and for our immigrant residents, and that we must find some pathway to citizenship for those 11 million people who are waiting for us. At a time when people are justifiably anxious about their future, we have too many people who live in fear that there'll be a knock on their door and that their American dream will come to a halt, fear that their parents won't be home when they come back from school, fear that when they get back from wearing this nation's uniform, that their families will be broken up. We demand something that is better. And together we say that there is a pathway forward. Look to our cities where we have worked hard to help people become citizens who are legal residents here but never applied. For those who've been undocumented, we helped them get the legal status that they were offered in the last few years. And now with a new administration and new Congress in place, the time to act is ripe and the time to act is now. So as we look at these policies and enact this resolution, we hope it shows that the benefit of all people is backed by a bipartisan coalition. And we will not compromise our values. We will not compromise what we stand for. And we have probably a rich set of political perspectives represented here. But one thing that does unite us is that this was a country whose history has been founded on immigrants, been fueled by immigrants, and we must continue to keep that American dream moving forward. Let me say something briefly in Spanish and then toss it over to Mayor Elorza, one of our co-chairs, together with Mayor Tom Tate of Providence and Anaheim, respectively, to say some words too. Hoy los alcaldes de nuestro país se han unido detrás de una resolución de emergencia sobre la inmigración. Demócratas y republicanos de diferentes regiones han reafirmado los principios americanos. Esta resolución ha pasado porque como alcaldes reconocemos nuestra responsabilidad de ser líderes inclusivos que defienden la igualdad y la oportunidad en nuestras comunidades. Esta resolución llama al Congreso a pasar reformas migratorias comprensivas y a proteger a aquellos que han beneficiado del programa DACA. La resolución también llama a las ciudades a seguir luchando por las comunidades inmigrantes. Esto mandará un mensaje claro a cualquier persona que busque dividir nuestras comunidades. Nosotros defenderemos a nuestra gente y estamos listos para trabajar con ambos partidos. Pero esto no significa que vamos a sacrificar nuestros valores. Nosotros defenderemos a todos nuestros residentes que son americanos en todos medidos, menos sus papeles. And this would not have happened without the great work of everybody here. And look at this coalition, by the way. White, black, brown, Asian, Native. But the two men who have led the way for a long time as our co-chairs of our immigration task force are Mayor, one who happens to be a Democrat, though he represents many independents and Republicans as well, one who happens to be a Republican but represents everybody in his city. Please welcome Jorge Elorza, the mayor of Providence. Thanks, Bob.
Good afternoon y buenas tardes a todos. I want to begin by recognizing Mayor Garcetti. Thank you so much for your leadership in bringing this resolution forward and working with the Immigration Task Force, my colleague and co-chair, Mayor Tom Tate from Anaheim, and I thank you for your leadership. And I do want to say that it makes me tremendously proud to stand here with my colleagues from across the country and taking this strong position and calling on United States Congress and the incoming administration to act on comprehensive immigration reform. As Mayor Garcetti just mentioned, if there's one thing that we can all agree on and that truly does unite us, it's that America has always been a nation and a country of immigrants. And every wave of successive generations of immigrants that have come to this country, they've found challenges, they've encountered barriers, and they've encountered discrimination. We've seen this with Irish immigrants, we've seen this with Italian immigrants, we've seen this with Jewish immigrants. But what these immigrant communities have also found, generation after generation, in spite of the pushback, there are always caring, good-hearted people that welcome them to their new homes. And so the steps that the U.S. Conference of Mayors is taking today is part of this larger and longer legacy of inclusion and caring for others. And it's tremendously important to folks in our home communities and folks throughout the country that we send this reassuring message that, we welcome you here, that we support you here, and we want to find a way so that you can also live out the same American dream that other generations of immigrants have enjoyed. And all of us are at different points in our home communities. We have different challenges, we have different constraints, and we start from different places. So there's no one-size-fits-all to the approaches that we need to take. But I continue to urge all of our colleagues and mayors across the country that we send that message of reassurance to our immigrant communities, that they are safe and that we have their back. Whether it means speaking at a local community meeting, signing a resolution, or extending the benefits and policies of your city to the immigrant community. We all have a role to play. We all have a voice in this, and I appreciate that we have all chosen to speak in unison. Second, it's also important that we as mayors not shy away from the issue of immigration and not apologize for immigrants in our community, but instead flip the conversation on its head and talk about the value and the assets that having a large immigrant community actually represents. Immigrants literally built this country. They have in the past, and they will continue to in the future. Immigrants are some of the most industrious and resilient people that you will ever meet. They're an asset to our communities. And in fact, in 2010, a full 40% of Fortune 500 companies had been founded by either immigrants or their children. Immigrants are less likely to commit a crime, in spite of what you may hear. And as we all know, speaking multiple languages is an advantage and is better than speaking only one. So let's not be shy about parrying back to not only defend our immigrant communities, but to highlight the asset and the value that they bring to our cities. And certainly, last but not least, as we as mayors choose to take a stand on immigration issues, let's remember that we are not alone. We stand together. Over the past couple of months, as the issue of sanctuary cities has come to the fore, it's been so reassuring to know that there are mayors from throughout the country that have taken similar positions. Now, whether you are a sanctuary city or not, whether you have taken active steps in your committee yet or not, know that if you do, you're standing shoulder to shoulder with mayors from throughout the country that also believe that every resident should have access to the American dream. And so we call on Congress for a comprehensive immigration reform. We call for protection of the dreamers, and we also call for inclusive policies that give everyone a chance to live out the American dream. Now with that, I'll hand it over to my colleague, who I also thank for his leadership in making all of this possible, the mayor of the city of Anaheim, California, Tom Tate.
Thank you, Jorge. Thank you, Jorge. Thank you, Eric. This is we have a task force that was formed a few years ago to address this issue. I'm from Anaheim, California, West Coast. I'm a Republican. Jorge is from Providence, Rhode Island, East Coast, and a Democrat. Part of it's symbolism. This encompasses all of us. All of us mayors deal with this issue on a day-to-day basis. So I believe it's natural that the mayors come together to address this. What we're asking for is really very simple, just in a bipartisan way, because this really isn't a partisan issue. We are asking for Congress, respectfully, we're asking to fix a broken immigration system that we have to deal with on a day in and day out basis in our cities. So it's as simple as that. Anaheim is a city that's, we're very ethnic. We have a huge immigrant population. This affects people's lives day in and day out. So the message is simply bipartisan mayors are seeking immigration reform to fix a broken immigration system, and we're asking Congress to do it and start immediately. Thank you so much.
Happy to open to questions, and then, happy to have other mayors talk too. I always hate to exclude any mayor. Yes, sure, Conan.
It's taken so long for immigration reform to pass through both houses. Is there any possibility, if anybody ventured the notion that as it took Nixon, the anti-communist, to open up China, that Donald Trump may actually
Took
be
the
president
words out of my
to
mouth. You know, we see ex-generals bring peace agreements to Israel. We see in Palestine. We see folks who have stepped forward, like Nixon, and gone to China. We do hope that there will be moments in time when people can not just mark history, but make history. But they don't ever do that alone. They do that because the collective country calls on them to represent all of us. This president-elect has said he wants to be a unifying president and represent all of us. What better way to do that than to help enact comprehensive immigration reform to fix a broken system, to make sure our economy is strong, to ensure that people don't live in fear, and to have our city streets be safe. So I do hold out that hope. I also hold out hope not just in an executive branch, but in a legislative branch. I just came from Capitol Hill. 2 of the 3 people who have introduced legislation to protect the Dreamers are Republicans, Senator Graham and Senator Flake, who together with Senator Durbin have put forward 2 different resolutions to enact what was executive action on the legislative side. We think that would be smart for at least a period of 3 years. Gives these young people, we'd like to see probably longer, but at least the breathing room to have comprehensive immigration reform passed. And there's a real hunger for this. If we fail this, we fail our economy, we fail our nation. We don't just fail these dreamers and these immigrants. I can guarantee that each one of us knows that impact. 61% of LA's Main Street businesses are opened by immigrants. I would hate to see that sort of progress rolled back, and that's what we're talking about.
Mayor Garcetti, what's the joint position of this coalition about the threat of federal funds being cut for a so-called sanctuary city?
Well, I think that we all wish there were more federal money than we actually get. It's less and less each year, so maybe it's less and less of a threat. But look, there's a lot of myths out there. The idea that because in certain cities we demand constitutional process, a court warrant before we hand somebody over to federal immigration officials, works well for our cities and works well for the federal government. But it shows we actually collaborate and cooperate every day. In Los Angeles, we hand over dangerous criminals, rapists, murderers, et cetera, to our federal officials and counterparts for deportation. That happens right now in America every single day. I can't think of a single city here that doesn't work with federal officials. But we also don't think people should be singled out by the way they look, or a grandmother who didn't pay her traffic tickets and it went up to a higher level crime, that they should suddenly have a divided family or a disrupted economy. So we hope that this federal government would not enact those policies. These are policies that help safeguard and protect our president-elect on the streets of New York. I think Mayor de Blasio has pointed out. These are dollars that help our homeless veterans find housing. These are dollars that protect our ports and our airports. These are critical dollars. And by the way, they are tax dollars. I can't speak for everybody up here, but those who get a better statistic than this, we're happy to subsidize you. LA folks pay $1 and get 73 cents back from Washington. And in fact, cities in general subsidize a lot of the great work in our rural communities around this country. So we would hope that we wouldn't see a lesser and lesser share of that. And I think we have a pretty strong case to make.
I just want to jump in one very quick point. First of all,
let me be your comms guy.
oh, there you go. Well done. Thank you. Well, we all support each other. I want to thank Mayor Garcetti and Mayor Tate, Mayor Lorza, because they're doing something this nation needs a lot more of. They're showing a bipartisan effort, a common sense answer to a problem that's bedeviled us for decades. And it is an open moment. We don't know where things are going. But to see a bipartisan group get together and say, here are some first principles we should all agree on, that we need a comprehensive solution, that we have to take care of the dreamers who didn't make the decision to come here but now are part of us. That's very powerful, and that's the kind of thing that shapes the debate. But to the immediate question on the federal funding, I think the way we look at it, a lot of us in terms of day-to-day work, yes, we already work with our federal partners in terms of dangerous criminals. That's a given. But in terms of a threat to funding that would take away from our efforts to help our people every day, we can't live in fear of a potential threat to funding and start doing things that are bad for the people of our cities as a result. That's something I think that typifies mayors. We have our feet on the ground where the rubber hits the road, and we have to keep serving the whole community. I have a community of 8.5 million people, 500,000 of whom happen to be undocumented. They are no less New Yorkers. They're working, they're contributing in so many ways. We have to keep serving them. We have to keep working with them. Our police are so clear. My police commissioner, Jimmy O'Neill, and our police leadership tell me all the time that open working relationship with 500,000 people who happen to be undocumented is part of keeping us all safe. So because of a potential loss of dwindling federal funds, if we would alter who we are, we would actually be hurting the lives of our people. It would be counterproductive.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
And I want to thank Ed Murray as well, just on that note. He chairs our police task force here. and police chiefs around the country, and under his leadership too, and I know the Seattle Police Chief, she's here, have really made this case. And these are generally probably a more conservative group, probably more registered Republicans among police chiefs than among the mayors, and I think they understand how important that is. Do you want to say something on that,
No,
too,
I can,
Mitch?
clearly, I can address that on behalf of the conference. The IACP, PERF, the major police chiefs organizations in partnership with the mayors are going to do everything we can to make sure that we secure the streets of America, as Mayor de Blasio enunciated. When it comes to violent criminals, every police department in America and all the mayors, our primary responsibility is to secure the streets. That's different from asking mayors and police departments to become a deportation force on behalf of the federal government. As both Mayor Garcetti and as Mayor de Blasio said, every day we cooperate with our federal officials. As a matter of fact, none of us run our police departments without an intense relationship between the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, the U.S. Marshals. That cooperation has been out there for years, and we're going to continue to do that. But at the same time, I think what you're witnessing here is fairly profound. You actually have Democrats and Republicans in the same room. That's not something that you see in Washington, D.C. very much. And you have leaders coming together asking for a comprehensive approach to make sure not only that our streets are safe, but everybody has an opportunity. We are in a nation of immigrants, and our diversity is our strength, and I think you're hearing that loud and clear from this conference. So, Mayor Garcetti, thank you for your work. Mayor Elorza, Mayor Tate, Mayor Murray, thank all of you for all the work that you guys have done. If y'all have any other questions, I'm sure the mayors would be happy to answer them.
Mayor Garcetti, are there any plans to do something to prevent mass federal raids on public places like schools or churches?
I think it's different in every single city, but I can speak to Los Angeles. And let me also thank Chief O'Toole from Seattle, who's here. Where's the chief? I just want to, who I'm sure with a name like O'Toole has some immigrant links, I know, herself. In Los Angeles, we certainly have. Our Los Angeles Unified School District has said their schools are going to be safe places. Private colleges have joined together with our public universities and community colleges to do the same. And many faith institutions have said those churches and synagogues and mosques will be places of refuge for folks should there be that sort of comprehensive action. Other cities, many of us, I know Mayor Lee, first Mayor de Blasio in New York, Mayor Emanuel, and many others probably here, put together justice funds. We've done the same in Los Angeles, $10 million, to provide legal counsel and due process to these specific populations. And I want to be clear, we're not saying anybody who's detained and anybody will get legal defense paid for by us, but those folks who basically are only accused of wrongdoing because they're dreamers or because they're a military family will have defense in due process, about 8 times more likely to have a better outcome if you have legal counsel than if you don't. And given how slow-moving the immigration courts are right now, as long as this isn't done in some illegal way, if there's an attempt with mass deportations and people get their hearing in court, this is something that could take decades. I mean, these courts are not moving as it is today. Double the number of cases or try to triple them, it's going to be years before we hear those. So let's solve the problem instead of fighting it out one case at a time.
All right, thank you all very much.
Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.